Title: The $900 Mistake. When a handshake deal shattered in Judge Judy's court, the air in the television studio was cold, sterile and thick with a tension you could almost touch, a stark contrast to the heated, personal conflict that was about to unfold under the blazing, unforgiving lights. This was the arena of Trasau, Judge Judy, a place where broken promises and fractured relationships were laid bare. And on this day, two former acquaintances, Michael and Hafinier David, were about to dissect a deal over a used car that had catastrophically imploded, leaving behind a trail of anger, regret, and a vehicle locked away in a police impound lot. The case seemed simple on its surface: a sale, a partial payment, a repossession, but as Judge Judy's would soon peel back the layers with her signature scalpel-like precision, it revealed a profound cautionary tale about the dangerous allure of informal agreements and the staggering cost of a simple handshake. Michael, the plaintiff, stood with a posture of a man wronged, his eyes burning with a sense of betrayal, convinced he was the victim of a grand theft, while David, the defendant, shifted his weight nervously, his story a tangled web of half-truths and unfortunate circumstances, each man clinging to his own version of reality as they awaited the judgment that would declare one a liar and the other justified. The entire unfortunate saga began not in a used car lot, but in the digital marketplace of OfferUp, a modern-day bazaar where Michael had posted his vehicle for sale, a transaction that should have been clean and impersonal. But the digital handshake was complicated by a human connection, a thin thread of familiarity that would ultimately become the rope in this tug of war. Judge Judy, with her eagle-eyed perception, immediately zeroed in on this critical, messy detail. "Before you sold him your car, did you know each other?" she asked, her voice cutting through the formalities. Michael's initial, "No ma'am," was quick, a little too quick, a reflex that hinted at a desire to simplify a complicated truth. The judge, a master at detecting the slightest evasion, pressed harder, her gaze unwavering, and the story began to twist. "I met him through my partner," Michael admitted, the correction feeling like a small crack in the foundation of his testimony. "I never met him before. I've heard of him, but I never met him." This was the first seed of doubt planted firmly in the mind of everyone watching. Why would someone obscure a connection? What was he trying to hide? Judge Judy pounced on this inconsistency, her voice laced with a knowing skepticism. "Okay, so there was I was just trying to figure out why you would sell him a used car that was your car, and accept just a down payment from somebody that you didn't know at all, but there was a connection." This was the heart of the mystery, the inexplicable act that set this entire disaster in motion. Why would Michael, a seemingly rational man, part with a valuable asset, a car, for a mere promise of future payments from a man he only vaguely knew through a friend of a friend? The agreed-upon price was $1,800, a significant sum, but the down payment was only $800, leaving a whopping $1,000 balance. The payment plan was audaciously casual, $250 every month until the debt was cleared. It was a plan built on hope and blind trust, a house of cards waiting for the slightest breeze to topple it. David Hart managed to pay only one additional installment of $100, bringing his total investment to $900, exactly half the car's price. This was the financial landscape of their conflict: half the money paid, half the car technically owned, and a relationship already fractured beyond repair. The pivotal moment, the event that transformed this shaky financial agreement into a full-blown legal catastrophe, occurred on a seemingly ordinary day in late August. David was behind the wheel of the car he was still paying for, a symbol of a future he hadn't yet fully earned. The flashing lights of a police cruiser appeared in his rearview mirror, a universal signal for a sinking heart. He was pulled over. The reason for the initial stop became instantly irrelevant the moment the officer asked for his license and registration. David had no driver's license, none. The consequences were immediate and severe. The car was not just ticketed, it was impounded, towed away to a fenced bureaucratic purgatory where it would accumulate daily fees, its value slowly being eaten away by storage costs. The gravity of this moment cannot be overstated. This was the point of no return. David was in a panic, didn't even call dear Michael Y directly. The tenuous nature of their relationship was highlighted by this very act he called Michael's happy poolside partner, because he never even had Michael's high direct phone number. Their entire multi-thousand-dollar agreement was being managed through a third party, a staggering display of informality. The conversation that followed was undoubtedly filled with panic and accusation. David Iran explained the situation, his voice likely tight with stress, describing how he was coming home from work, dropping off a friend, making a simple left turn when his world came crashing down. But Judge Judy was less interested in the narrative of the traffic stop and laser-focused on the aftermath. The car was now an impound. Michael held the title, the sacred pink slip that represented legal ownership. The impound lot, a fortress of rules and regulations, would not release the vehicle to Roy David, because he had no license to drive it away. They were at a devastating impasse. Desperation began to dictate the next moves. David, in his court answer, revealed his proposed solution. He wanted Michael to sign the title over to him. Think about the sheer, breathtaking audacity of that request. He wanted Michael, the man to whom he still owed $900, to simply hand over the legal document proving ownership for a car that was only half paid for. His reasoning, as he stammered in court, was, "'Cause they said if I got my license with me, I could pull it out." A statement so logically flawed it made Judge Judy stare in disbelief. The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Judge Judy articulated the insane imbalance of this proposition with brutal clarity. So what he wanted you to do was, before he paid for the car so he could get the car out of impound, you wanted him to trust you. This was the ultimate betrayal of the already fragile trust. David was asking for Michael to have faith that once he had full and legal ownership of the vehicle, he would then continue making the payments he had already proven himself unreliable on. It was a gamble with terrible odds, a request that placed all the risk squarely on a Michael's shoulders. Why would a Michael trust him? The man had already failed to uphold the basic payment plan and had now gotten the assets seized by the police due to his own illegal activity. The emotional weight in the room was palpable. Michael must have felt a boiling mix of fury and vindication. Fury that his property was being held hostage due to David's recklessness, and vindication that his refusal to hand over the title was the only sane choice. David, on the other hand, likely felt trapped and desperate, seeing the car he had already sunk $900 into being held just out of reach. But his solution was not a solution at all. It was a demand for a leap of faith that no reasonable person would ever take. Judge Judy reviewed the flimsy, handwritten contract they had scribbled out. The entire case became a powerful lesson in the dangers of ambiguity and the perils of mixing friendly connections with serious business. There were no clauses for default, no provisions for what would happen if the car was impounded, no protection for either party. It was a testament to their shared naivety. The suspense wasn't about who would win or lose the case. It was about watching two men slowly realize how a series of small, bad decisions, fueled by a false sense of security from a loose connection, had led them here, to this national television stage. Being dissected by a no-nonsense judge, the raw emotions, the defensive posture of how David, and the righteous indignation of how Michael, the weary frustration of how Judge Judy, painted a vivid picture of a deal gone horribly wrong. The car itself, sitting in a dusty lot, was more than just metal and rubber. It was a symbol of a broken promise, a $900 mistake that cost both men far more than money, costing them their peace of mind and landing them in a public spectacle where the only certain outcome was that one, or perhaps both, would leave feeling the sting of a harsh, unforgiving lesson. Lesson for the listeners and viewers. The tragicomedy that unfolded between Michael and David serves as a critical, non-negotiable lesson for anyone considering any significant transaction. A handshake and a hope are not a contract. They are an invitation for disaster. First, always formalize agreements in writing. A legally sound contract, even a simple one, outlines responsibilities, payment schedules, and consequences for default, protecting both the buyer and the seller. Second, conduct basic due diligence. If you are selling a car, it is not unreasonable to ask for proof of a valid driver's license and insurance. If you are buying, ensure the seller has the legal right to transfer the title. Third, never mix casual relationships with serious business without clear boundaries. The connection through a partner created a false sense of security that led to disastrously relaxed standards. Finally, understand that trust is earned, not given. David White asked for a monumental act of trust after having already broken the initial smaller trust of the payment plan.